had to take home a flip chart, post it up on the wall and do the pros and cons of staying at the organization where I had a nice, comfortable career path or going out on my own. So I'm like, pro for this, con for that, what am I going to do? And at the very end of it, I decided that because I told my children, hey, if you believe in a dream, stick your neck out. And so I thought, I can't tell them that and then play it safe.
Yeah.
So I did. And January 1st of the year 2000, hung out the shingle. I didn't really leave Birkman in my heart. I still stayed connected to them and I still do work for them. But I loved from the moment I started, helping teams and leaders and individuals be better versions of themselves.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the LeaderPass Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Mitten. Today, I am thrilled to introduce a remarkable guest, Patti Hansen. Patti is a seasoned consultant with decades of experience specializing in the renowned Birkman Method. Having worked closely with the founder of this method, Patti has gained invaluable insights into business and into leadership. She has since built her own thriving practice working with clients around the globe to help them discover their best selves and achieve their fullest potential. Patti's passion lies in using the Birkman assessment not just as a tool for understanding, but as a means to unlock personal and professional growth. She's dedicated to helping individuals and teams navigate their paths with clarity and with purpose. With a wealth of experience, including interpreting thousands of individual reviews, Patti is a true expert in her field. Her ability to translate complex assessments into actionable insights is unparalleled, making her a sought-after coach and consultant. We're honored to have her here, sharing her wisdom and experience with us today. Welcome, Patti. So Patti, excited to have you on LeaderPass Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's been great being with you the last few days and learning about what you do. But would you tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself and your background?
Thank you so much. It's fun to be here. And we have really learned a lot about working with each other. It's a lot of fun. I have been a consultant for decades, actually, and most of my practice is built around an assessment tool, the Birkman Method. I don't have to have it, but it's extra sweet when I do. I have worked with the founder of the Birkman Method for over a decade, loved it, and learned so much about business from him. And then in this century, I have started my own practice and had the pleasure of working around the world, sometimes virtually, sometimes in person, on many different continents with many different types of people, and having a blast, loving it.
Back when you started, was it a lot of people? Were there many people that did that? Or were you one of the first to say, hey?
I would say that assessments were really beginning to gain traction, okay? But they were mostly used at that point to be screened for a job. Do you look like an engineer? Do you look like a salesperson? But things have really changed in the last couple of decades. I see now more about coaching, which is what I focus on, helping people to live their best life, to find their best role, and ways that they can sort of continually improve. Using an assessment tool can be mistaken for, let me take a snapshot of who you are and will be. But using an assessment with a coach is, who are you today and where do you want to go? How can we help you get there? What stands in the way?
Nice.
And I find that fascinating. And I love to see the light come on in people's eyes when they think, oh, I could do this. Why don't I do that? What would it take to get there?
No, that's awesome. Take me through just the moment you decided to kind of go, okay, I'm going to strike out on my own. That's the entrepreneur in you doing that. What was that first step like? And was there anybody that helped you either at the company or, a coach of your own that kind of helped you do it or not?
There was a turning point. I had to take home a flip chart, post it up on the wall and do the pros and cons of staying at the organization where I had a nice, comfortable career path or going out on my own. So I'm like, pro for this, con for that, what am I going to do? And at the very end of it, I decided that because I told my children, hey, if you believe in a dream, stick your neck out. And so I thought, I can't tell them that and then play it safe.
Yeah.
So I did. And January 1st of the year 2000, hung out the shingle. I didn't really leave Birkman in my heart. I still stay connected to them and I still do work for them. But I loved from the moment I started helping teams and leaders and individuals be better versions of themselves.
That's awesome. Was it
Yeah.
hard then? I mean, when you made that step, was there a rocky
Really.
period, or you just jump right in and
Because a lot of people had known me from my exposure to working with them during Birkman use and things like that. I had a lot of support. You asked me if there was one person who helped, and I had a mentor that I had worked with internally at Birkman, and that was Dr. Timothy Sadler.
Okay.
And he was someone who was brilliant, and he kind of took me under his wing and said, go for it. You can do this, And so I did. And I never looked back. I've never regretted it.
Curiosity about Birkman, had it been around a number of years prior to, or like how long have they been around?
Great. I think it was begun around 1951.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it had been sort of in the background. It was privately held, and they didn't do a lot of marketing. The founder was an introvert. So most of his energy was spent on developing this tool. I used to tease him and say, our marketing plan must have been created in the field of dreams. It's like, if we build it, they will come. And most people would search for it or by personal referral, or they used it at a previous company. But at that time, we didn't do a really aggressive job of saying, hey, we've got this great thing. But now they've been around for almost 70 years.
Wow.
And
That's amazing.
when I started, it was in English. It was pencil and paper, fill out the little Scantron, and that was taking the Birkman. Now it's 25 languages used all around the world.
Wow. All electronic, all digital.
Oh, yes.
Immediate report.
Immediate.
Yeah.
I have a client in Poland who can take it in one language. I'm notified within 60 seconds that it's available, and I can pull it in English.
Nice.
I can send it then to their manager in Spanish in Puerto Rico. So
wow.
It's grown
That's
quite a
awesome.
bit.
That's awesome. Well, it's obviously successful assessment. I mean, and when I think of assessments just from the outside looking in, and people I've worked with before, there's always a hesitancy. And that is, okay, first I think, okay, how long is this going to take? And then I think, what is this going to reveal? Is it accurate? Is this based on like studies and people or behavioral or science, or how did they come up with this?
Well, that's a really good question. A lot of this came from some of Roger Birkman's original thinking. I'll go back a step to say he was serving in World War II. He was a bomber pilot, and he would come back from their missions and they would have a debrief. The navigator would say, well, this is what happened. And the gunnery guy would say, no, this is what happened. And he would say, no, you're both wrong. This is what happened. And he started thinking about our personal perceptions, the way we filter what we see, experience, and hear is really driven by who we are. And after the war experience, where he was shot down and hidden by the underground, it's very dramatic. But after he came back to the US, he went back to finish his PhD, and this became part of his thesis work, understanding those filters. And he began working on that and refining it. And he developed this tool that was not just how do you show up, because there are a lot of assessment tools that you've heard of on the market. There's Myers-Briggs, there's DISC, there's so many different things, and they're great. But what Birkman does that's different is looks at what fuels you, what kind of manager, what kind of work partner, what kind of job lights your fire. And it's that symbiotic nature of, we want you to be your best, and this is what can keep you at your best. That's made all the difference for Birkman.
We met through Jacqueline, and she uses that term a lot, like how you show up. And I've heard that. Tell us what that means. Like, what do you mean by that? I know you said fuels you.
Right. Well, the showing up, is your typical everyday behavior.
Okay.
What people appreciate about you. Oh, she's a great talker. He's hospitable. She's so motivating. So it becomes sort of how people recognize your talents. And they say, oh, you know how he is. He's very creative, or you're going to have to look hard for him because his organization is, kind of up in the ether somewhere. So it's what we do a lot of in our behavior, but it's something you can depend on. It's sort of our reliable, this is the way we behave on a regular basis.
Okay, so it's the go-to default
kind of default, socialized behavior. You've got it.
Okay, and so you've got, as I'm learning about it from you and even from Jacqueline, there's essentially 4 colors. And that's what reminds me of the other ones.
Right.
But there's also, tell us a little bit about the symbols, or how, just give us kind of a broad brush of that.
I would say the colors is sort of the shallow end of the pool, the very most basic, that says anything that we talk about around blue is going to be very creative, very conceptual, very intangible. So like ideas and feelings. Anything around green is around motivation and excitement and groups of people and having fun. Red is about making it happen and happen fast. Be decisive, be practical, no whining. And yellow is about getting things in order, making success repeatable, helping you scale something, writing a recipe, and then being able to replicate it over time.
Yeah. Okay.
And we need all of those for a project to be successful.
Yeah, for a team or for a project to work. So symbols and then also components. What are those and how those play into the assessment?
I am glad that you asked. The symbols are really sort of the view from 20,000 feet. So it's a quick, more generalized view of different aspects of the individual. We use an asterisk. Think about that as excitement about the work I'm doing. So it's the tasks that attract me or don't attract me. And then one of probably the most observable pieces of an individual's Birkman personality is the diamond. Think of it as brilliant and a jewel. It's your gift to the world. It's how you show up. It's your default behavior. So that comes pretty naturally to people. Go, oh yes, of course I do that. But then once again, the secret that says, where am I happiest? In a team that gives me what? When I'm managed in what place? What kind of culture really meets my needs? Learning about that and paying attention to that and working on getting that can help the coach serve the client. It can also help the client be more aware about the work they need to do to fit better into the roles that they choose for themselves.
So 2 symbols, 3, how many total symbols?
There's actually 4. We talked about the interest, work I love, diamond, me at my best, need, how I seek to be treated and supported. And then there's also an incidental score that says, if life is tough, if you're not getting your needs met or you're under a lot of pressure, watch out for the stress behavior when you could not be particularly effective. And our goal is to keep you in the diamond, keep you in your best behavior, doing the things you love.
Got it. And that fits with, those are the components as well? Because I heard you mention that word. Is that?
Well, actually, we take that generalized view, which is good for a workshop or a quick conversation or getting to know someone rapidly. For coaching, I would really recommend that you dig a little deeper for a longer term engagement. We break the diamond and the circle and the stress moniker into more factors, actually 9, in fact.
Oh, wow.
And we dig into how you behave, typically, how people see you, what you crave in the means of support, and also behavior to watch out for. So it's very prescriptive in that we don't just say, and here you are. We say, now in this situation, watch out for that. You might try doing this. And so a coach provides a lot of proactive antidotes. If you get into trouble, you can try this. If you feel stress coming on, remember to do this. And so that helps you operate on more of an even keel the majority of the time.
Super valuable.
Very much so, especially as we focus on self-management. People need to remember that they have a lot more choice about their behavior than they think. If I know, and I do know, that in times of stress, I get a little loud and a tad bossy. If I start doing that, I can say, I don't have to go there. I can dial down the volume. I can take a deep breath and say, tell me your opinion. So I have a coach too.
To
I
manage
think even
yourself.
coaches need coaches.
Coaches need coaches.
Yes, they do.
Love that. So you've got several applications of this, and then I want to talk about the certification idea. But you were sharing with me that even you talked to an actress years ago about how you could even use knowing the assessment or knowing what your character is. I think is that how you explained it?
Right, because if you can describe a behavior in your mind, you can see how that is embodied in someone's behavior and their personality. In fact, Dr. Birkman's youngest daughter, Andrea Birkman, was an actress in Hollywood herself, And when she was in plays, she often used to prepare for a role by saying, well, this person is probably like this in the Birkman. Maybe they're very extroverted and bubbly. And so she could kind of imagine what that personality report might look like and then go out and model it for us. And that was a good way for her to prepare.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So is it more for individual or you said a lot about teams and working as a team.
Mhm.
Why would I take the Birkman, or why would I want to take
As an
it?
individual?
Yeah. Is it just to understand myself better?
A lot of people do because they may take their own strengths, their own unique differences for granted because they think, oh, everyone is charming, everyone is organized. And trust me, not everyone is. So it helps you to articulate what you bring to the table, which can be helpful in looking for a new job or resume or a new career path. But it can also say, what are the things I need in life to be on an even keel, to feel like I'm at my best? I don't know if you've ever worked in an environment or a culture where you didn't get what you needed. Maybe it was a tough way to feel connected to the organization. There are going to be different cultures where you fit and some where you may not fit. This helps you find that better fit for a job and also the people that you work with.
And I guess if you're an entrepreneur and you're building your own organization, to know yours could also say, where are my gaps, I guess, or are you looking for
Exactly.
where you need help?
Well, you bring up an interesting point that says a lot of people, especially when they're building their own teams from the ground up, may say, well, I want someone who's kind of like me that I can get along with.
Yeah.
But then you end up with sort of a cookie cutter approach that says, but who's watching the books? Or who's getting the product out the door? So the smart entrepreneur or organization says, we need a mix of people so that we don't have blind spots and we've got coverage all over. Because the truth is, none of us can do it all. I have to watch out for details and structure and systems myself because I love doing other things. So I partner with people or intentionally hire people who can watch out for areas and be involved where I'm just not paying attention.
Yeah, and I've met Natalie, and that kind of reminds me of what you were telling me about Natalie.
That's true.
And so describe that and that role, I guess, for her and why that fits.
Good. Natalie has just joined us, coming on board to help with making sure the execution goes well for our projects. I love the ideas and the creation and the talking about it, and I enjoy facilitating in the group, but tracking it, making sure it comes in on time and that all of the moving parts arrive at the same conclusion. That's her expertise with a background in project management and overseeing operations. So I'm excited as we do larger and larger projects for organizations. I need that to help us do the heavy lifting to make sure that they run smoothly. Whereas if I were trying to do that all by myself or with just a couple of people, it'd be a little too much and I might not be my best.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So when you think about your clients, just a kind of what stirred up in my mind when you were talking about just a variety of uses for it,
Oh, definitely.
is that I bet you've seen some unusual things, but one of the predictions that people I think tend to make, or at least I'll use myself, is that I'm like, well, I bet I'm this color, or I bet I'm this. And do they walk in oftentimes, or when you're giving this to a team, do they think, well, they already know it and they're surprised ever, or is it is it just putting handles around who they probably think they were?
If I were to put it into the most common thing, excuse me, I think some of the things that go, oh yeah, I knew that. I couldn't describe it until you gave me words for it.
Yep.
But then there is always something that I went, oh yeah, I do that. Or I really do like it when I'm in that kind of environment. So there's always some surprises. There's always some validation. And I think one of the roles that Birkman plays is it helps measure and compare these concepts about you to other people to know which teams are going to work well or how to manage somebody.
Yeah. So is there any ever disagreement, like where they see the report and they're like, that's just not me. That's not what I do.
Well, I would say that the way I have figured it, I have probably done between 2,000 and 3,000 individual reviews, and I could count on one hand the number of people who have said, I'm just not sure this fits.
Really?
Now, I don't mean that every single scale they'll go perfect, 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 but we've been pretty much in the range. I think the agreement rate is somewhere in the high 80 or low 90 percentile. So that's pretty high.
That is very high. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just stop for a second and say that in my mind, if you've delivered and interpreted and
Mhm.
coached and walked that many people through. That's 3,000 people, 2 to 3,000 people. You're an expert at that in my mind, because you've had so many reps and you've had so many instances. Do you begin to see patterns? Do you begin to
Oh,
have,
sure.
yeah.
Sure.
What kind of patterns would you see?
Well, I can see that we don't always fit stereotypes. For example, we always, not we always, but many people expect leaders to be loud and vocal and dominant. But there's some very good leaders that are quiet and thoughtful or very meticulous. So sometimes this can bust stereotypes, which I love.
Yeah.
And there can be gender surprises. We may think, oh, women are the softer, gentler, kinder gender, and men are more dominant and, brusque, but that's not the case. It's really pretty even. So even though society expects the stereotype, we may surprise them and say, well, this is a very vocal woman, or this is a tender-hearted man, and that's just as likely to happen. The world's just not ready to see it.
Yeah. And then how do you, how do you, I guess, protect against the feeling of, and I would back to how people experience this. Do they ever feel pigeonholed or ever feel like they're put in a box and this is who you are because you fit here? And how do you avoid that feeling?
Well, as a consultant and the consultants I work with, we work really hard that people don't feel tagged, like, oh, this is all I am. And so there are no hard borders between I'm this or that. We talk about degrees because maybe you're somewhere right on the edge of a little of both.
Mm.
Or maybe you've answered strongly in one direction and you're saying almost all the time I do it this way, but that doesn't mean 100%.
Mm.
And then we ask the individual, can you give me an example of when you might do it this way and maybe this way? But most people say we're in the right area about, yeah, I would say the majority of the time, not 100%, but the majority of the time you can predict that I'm going to respond this way.
Yeah, which is good back to how they work together and how
Right.
they accomplish what they're doing.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Have you ever had any crazy kind of instances where you've delivered it and there's been kind of either surprise or there's been, not necessarily disagreement, but some aha moments where it's like, oh
Oh,
my
are you
gosh.
kidding?
Yeah.
Every week.
Okay.
And then to what you said about disagreement, I have had several people who said, I'm just not sure how accurate this is. But then I get a phone call the next day or the day after that says, after further review and speaking with my spouse,
Yes. Yeah.
we think maybe it is accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. After all.
So sometimes it takes a while to sink in.
Hmm.
And it's not about this sweater will fit you. It's about, well, let's look at things that happen for you. Where do you shine? How do you show up when you're under a lot of pressure? Do you get loud and dominant, or do you say, I'm done with you and go sit away from someone?
Those are the stressors that you were talking about. That's
You're
the
right.
word, the verbiage you use.
Right.
Okay.
That stress behavior that says, we want to warn you about it. We're not saying you will do this. We're saying, watch out. Maybe you could become quieter. Maybe you could become more controlling with systems or whatever is pertinent for your personality. So the thing I like about Birkman is it's really a positive tool. You leave your review feeling better about yourself, more understood, but you also have some cautions that says, now remember, you love to talk and you might talk too much.
Hmm.
Be aware of that and kind of keep that in line. So the coach's role is to help them take that personality and to fit into their role in life. Maybe it's as a parent or a pastor or an engineer or a teacher, who knows? But to say, how can we help you be a little bit more successful? How can we help you be a benefit to the people that report to you?
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're, that's a great point. When you're coaching, when you take me from the review, which is like, here's your review. If you were my coach or you then spend X number of weeks or months like listening to my situation, understanding where I'm at either in
Oh,
career, and is that really what
definitely.
you're doing? Is you're kind of doing a deep
Depending
dive?
on the package, but I like to have an initial setup that says, tell me about your job, tell me about your work history, tell me what's going on great right
Mm.
now, and what challenges are you facing?
Okay.
Are you working with a tough team member or you don't know your manager well? So I really want to know the context of your life because I'm not just a data explainer. I want to say, this is your personality in this world.
Hmm.
And then we say, what do you want to get out of the conversation? And are you interested in me guiding, nudging you in the direction that you want?
Hmm.
So,
And you measure that based on either the outcome that's identified in the beginning or just how they feel about having you as a coach? Or how
well, I my preference is to say, how will we know you're there? What metrics are there in place? Will you be talking to your executives more often? Will you have better sales numbers or something where we can look back and go, yeah, that's
Success.
it.
Yeah.
I don't want people to just say, yeah, I feel better. So if we can have proof and examples for observation, I feel a lot more concrete about telling the client what they're getting, but maybe there's a sponsoring organization. And if they're paying for this program,
Hmm.
they want to know that there's ROI,
Yeah. Of
that
course. Yeah.
they want a return on their investment. If we coach this person, we expect them to be better at what, in what time period, be it 6 months, a year, whatever.
So walk me through, like, as you do the review,
Mhm.
and then take me through as a coach. Are you getting involved with are you asking me questions about my career and my family and just kind of helping me walk through that by
Okay.
using those findings? Is that the
Right.
idea?
Well, I would say there are some times that I only have one meeting with an individual to review their results. Maybe I'm getting them ready for a team session and I want them to have a private conversation first on who they are before they talk about who we are.
Mm.
So that's one area. But you mentioned coaching. So if I'm going to be working with an individual over a period of time, I want to get to know them at first, find out what's going on, positive things, which are just as motivating and important, as well as what challenges. I'd like to hear about their work background, how many people report to them, what responsibilities, if they're new in the job, just to kind of get to know them quickly. But that always sets the stage for us to then be able to say, oh, well, I bet this score works really well for you. Or tell me how you're feeling as a new manager. I see that you're very flexible. Has that been an issue for you?
Mm.
Maybe not following procedures the way your predecessor did. And so we link it to who they are. We do have different lengths of programs, so it may be a month, 6 months, a
Okay.
year,
Yep.
and
Based on the package or based on what they
right,
do. Yeah.
and what we're trying to do is help the individual with their self-knowledge get to where they wanna go.
Okay. And that's you either have measurement or some,
You're
like, whether
right,
it's ROI or
right. A lot of people, whether it's the individual themselves or the organization who is sponsoring them, says, "How do I know that you did a good job?
right.
How do I know they did their work?" So I like to have a metric that says, "We'll know you did it because you're more of this, and we can prove it," or "Sales improved," or "Turnover was reduced in your team," something like that, that gives us visible evidence that they think, "Oh, then that was a good investment."
Yeah. Let's talk about certification, because hearing you say that, your experience, you would naturally just go to from either trial and error over the years of being a coach yourself. But it would seem like a coach would really need to be not just knowledgeable of the data, like you said, but be able to figure out how to apply and how to guide that person,
Mm,
which requires people skills.
yes.
Talking about the certification,
Okay.
because and I don't know how many people have been certified and what
Thousands.
that process, thousands have. Okay.
Yes.
And were you a part of that early design of that, or were you around Birkman at the time, or when you did it, or?
In the late 80s and the 90s and coming up into 2000, I worked in the training, the certification at Birkman International.
Okay.
I was an
Okay.
employee.
There you go. Yeah.
And then when I went to have my own practice, I was coaching and helping people to understand their report in light of their context and issues.
Okay.
And I'm sure I was more of a basic coach at the time, but after decades of using the Berkman, I saw what a rapid escalation there was when you say, well, you might be having trouble about holding people accountable because this score says you really shy away from conflict. Is that true for you? Can you think of an example where that happened? And so then we'll talk about pinpointing root causes
Mm,
sometimes for some of the issues. And what you may have as an issue could be totally different from what I have as an issue. So personalized coaching
mhm.
is so much better than going to a group class and going, let's all talk about this.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but we get amazing results.
And do you train now other coaches or help them refine their skills like that? Because I know that's a big word that I've heard you say.
Yes, I am really big on working with people who are driven to be better.
Mm,
And we do have a refinement process for coaches and leaders
mhm.
where we say we want to take someone who's already good to great. I
Okay.
know you've heard the book,
Good
From
to
Good
great.
to
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
but we don't want status quo. We
Mm,
want outstanding. And if you add Berkman and experience and learning to the coaching process, you get there faster, you get there deeper, and you make greater strides toward those goals.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So why the word refinement? Because is it? I think I heard you say something about, well, it's not that they're bad.
No.
It's to get better, like you said. But did you intentionally are choosing that
Yes.
word for the threat?
I'm really lucky.
Yeah.
We're working with the upper echelon of people who are driven, who are already performing.
Hmm.
And if you want to be in the Olympics of executives, you want to be one of the best, you have to refine and polish what you do. So we're not working with broken leaders. We're not working with people who shouldn't be leaders. We're working with existing leaders, but somehow along the way, maybe they didn't feel really comfortable delivering bad news.
Mm.
Or they would hold on to people too long in a position that they really didn't fit. So we try to pinpoint issues that might be holding them back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then using the Birkman insight that we can share with them, we can help them then make better choices about behavior. We might role play with them, but we help them see the benefit in kind of stretching their behavior to a wider range.
Mm.
Sometimes there are people who need to learn to speak up. Some people need to learn to hush up.
Yeah.
And we can help modify that behavior. I suppose the biggest concept that belongs in our coaching is self-management. And Birkman brings the awareness of what you do. And then you have to be the grown-up that says, when am I going to use this? When am I going to discern to keep my mouth shut? And to make those choices that make you better at what you want to do.
And if I'm a coach, in my mind, I want to learn from the best or somebody who's gone through that to save me, I guess, pitfalls. What would be, if I was a coach listening to this or someone who just got certified, what would be a huge time saver? What would be a pitfall that you would say, Jamie, you got to avoid this?
Well, we've been talking a lot about that in the last couple of days, because understanding the client that you are trying to reach and support is super important, and an assessment tool can be helpful. But what we have often overlooked is you got to know yourself as a coach.
As a coach.
Yes. Let's just say, for example, that I'm very focused on results and getting there practically. So I have to be careful not to rush a client. Maybe they need to discover something. Maybe they need to think about it and sit on the idea before they're ready to accept it. I don't want my style to overwhelm their approach. I need to help get them to the action steps that are right for them.
Mm-hmm.
So the coach needs self-awareness and self-management.
Makes sense. You got to drink your own medicine or whatever.
Sadly, yeah.
But and then know that, and that's really in fact, one of the coolest techniques I heard you talk about as you were filming was the idea that if you are a coach, look at the other styles.
Yes.
And put yourself in that role for the day or for that afternoon, which is so cool. It's a great idea.
It is, and it's kind of fun.
So tell me an example of that, or what does that mean?
Well, let's just say you want to try on a new behavior. It's best if it's not hugely different from who you are. So I don't want an introvert to go to a wildly extrovert, but maybe you want to be a little more outgoing. So on your next business trip, when you go to the airport and when you get on the airplane, when you order coffee in the airport, do it in a little bit more friendly, casual, make a little quick friend with the person in line ahead of you and try on the behavior to see how natural it feels. If it feels awkward, you may be trying too hard to be too friendly. But what we're learning to do in coaching is, instead of change who you are, we're trying to give you a larger range. It's like, I can be a little bit more of this, or I know how to dial it down a little bit. And that gives people a huge repertoire of behavioral choices.
Mm-hmm. Does it help them understand the client's behavior more when they do that, or is it more just about themselves stretching?
Well, I would say mostly it's for them to learn to modify themselves for a world they may not know. But it helps if the client has some experience with emotional intelligence, because then they're concerned about, is the way I act, the way I talk, going to negatively or positively impact the people I run into, people I'm selling to, the people who are serving dinner to me, the people I live with. And when we realize it's not just about me, it's about me in connection with the people in my world. And sometimes we have to take credit or blame for some of the impact that our behavior has on others. Have you ever said something to someone, maybe in an offhanded way, and you maybe hurt their feelings, and you think, well, I didn't intend that. They're still hurt, whether you intended it or not. So we want to help people understand that there can be unintentional consequences to behaviors that we don't even think are a big deal.
Hmm. And even the other party, even as you described that, I remember you saying too, not losing your cool if someone does come across that way to you, where you would normally get your feelings hurt. So
That's
it's kind
right.
of both sides.
Right. And the more we work with teams, so you are talking to the recipient of communication and the speaker of communication, or someone who displays behavior, being more self-aware is the first step. Becoming more others aware
Mm.
is the next step that says, oh, I think she didn't respond well when I said that. Maybe she took it the wrong way. I better circle back and check with her, make sure she knows that I was teasing and I didn't want her to take that to heart.
Hmm. And not getting offended, I guess, if the person
Right,
does it to you.
right.
And I forget your phrase yesterday. You said something like, "Oh, it's just why is it a big deal? It's just the way they just respond. That's their
That's
default."
right. That's right. But we jump to conclusions. One of the things we urge people to consider is to assume innocence. If somebody ticks me off, instead of thinking, you did that on purpose, I know you wanted to get under my skin, instead think, that could be just the way they're wired, that they listen intently for what I say, and it would be easy for them to misconstrue it. So instead of getting in a blame game or pointing the finger and say, you're so sensitive, we just need to think, maybe there's a better way for me to have said that.
Mm.
So it rang true instead of being painful for them.
Could that also come through in email and in text? Do you see personalities? I mean,
Oh, heavens,
like
yes.
the way they communicate. So it's not just verbal.
I mean, you
It's
could do
like,
a whole workshop on email communication. Using caps, misspellings, colors, exclamation points. Well, and you might as well go to texting too. People can be offended by so much communication, and there's no intentionality. We're just so rushed.
hmm, yeah.
I have to share something with you. I get calls all the time from managers who say, I need you to come work with my team. What's going on? I will ask, and they'll say, well, we have really poor communication. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm so sorry to hear that. I said, can you tell me more about what's wrong with your communication? And they say, no, I can't. I just can't describe it. I thought, that's a communication
That's
problem
your
right
problem.
there.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Too funny. That is funny. Also, one of the interesting pieces of what you've been able to help either company owners or executives do is even kind of unintentionally yourself, is as you put people through this process and you unearth, here's some areas of improvement. Recently, I think you even said you had a client that was saying, or you felt like, hey, they're just not going to change. They're not going to do it. And you felt bad as the coach in that case with that organization.
well, first I had the human touch that said, I don't want to fail. And if you don't take part in this, I'm going to fail. But then I got out of myself and said, why are you not willing to work on this? Why do you just want to sit where you are in your feelings and not make an effort? Uh, Even though I was deciding to apologize to the sponsor that it hadn't gone that way, even though this was, not a common outcome at all, he said, actually, it was helpful because you helped us to see that he was not interested in growth, that despite numerous attempts from other people in the organization, ours was kind of the proving ground that said, despite nudging and personal attention, it just wasn't in the cards for him at this time. So I was sad for him, but the organization, and we didn't do it quickly. We took several months to really make sure. But it was a clarifying moment that said, maybe he's not right for the learning program, and maybe we need to rethink his role into more of an individual contributor.
So even as the ROI would normally be, hey, you helped this person change, in some ways that ROI was to save them from,
Oh, yes. Yes, they said we would have kept him on another 6 to 8 months, and his salary was, right here. So that would have been money right down the drain.
wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
So vast history with Birkman and with your business. Where do you see, and when you think about the future, where do you see things headed?
Well, I see it kind of as twofold. This leader refinement program that we are using has been very popular and very productive. But in order to staff and to service those kinds of programs, I really want to focus on what my favorite thing is, and that's coaching. At this age and stage in my career, I care about growing and, again, refining and strengthening the coaches that I work with And I would like for us to build sort of a community
Mm.
where we can share gained knowledge. Maybe we can offer programs that have worked for us. I mean, this is a huge country and very little rivalry. So if we can find a way to share those best practices for those of us who've gone ahead, I think it would be a great idea to offer support and insight and programs.
Help them take their business, their coaching business to the next level, basically.
Yes, because I think I mentioned before that the coaches that are attracted to using an assessment tool, say it's the Birkman, fall in love with the act of coaching. They love doing good and being of benefit to others, but they also have a responsibility to themselves to grow that business
Mm.
to the point that they target and to plan for their own future.
And I would imagine your entrepreneur side of who you are would come in pretty handy, and you would probably have some amazing insight on how to grow your business or develop your business as a coach.
I've tried several things that I've been pleased with, and you're right. I do have to keep a lid on the number of ideas sometimes, but
Mhm.
we were talking about some of those in this event we're planning,
Mhm.
and it's going to be here before you know it, where we can offer some ideas about elevating your practice and bringing in larger amounts of revenue and having continued relationships with organizations where they look at you as a ready resource, not as a one-time delivery person.
Right. And the event model, which I love, and it's kind of integrating our background to help you be able to do that too, is both in person, so you could have
Mhm.
interaction and do your training with the coaches, and then also offer a simulcast opportunity for those that maybe not able to come in.
Well, and we reach further that way.
Yep.
Busy schedules, they may not be able to join us in person. We'd love to have them any way they come.
Patti, it's just been awesome having you here, and I hope and see a lot of things in the future and a lot of great things for you, and then maybe some collaboration with
For sure.
us and
Yeah.
with Jacqueline, who introduced us and has amazing skill sets and vision for where we can go as well. But it's been a pleasure, and I think you are a true expert. I look at a lot of people that come in and I say, do they have the technical knowledge? Yes. Do they have the experience, and do they have the ability to communicate it? And you've got all three of those things. So
Oh,
thank you for being here.
thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
High five.